Jung did not say this with arrogance or contempt for people. He was simply describing a quiet truth. When you see too much, feel too deeply, and understand too clearly the things others avoid, solitude almost becomes an inevitable consequence. You may have felt this yourself. Standing in a crowded room while your mind is exhausted. You listen to everyone's stories, smile at the right moments, respond politely, yet deep inside, you know you're longing for something else. To be yourself without performing, without having to pretend you're fine. Not everyone wants to hear the truth, especially the truths about their inner world, their wounds, and their limits. And the person who realizes this the earliest is often the one who chooses silence. This piece is not written to glorify solitude, but to show you that for those who are truly intelligent and self-aware, solitude is not an emotional whim, but the natural outcome of a deepening consciousness. Together, we will move toward this question. Why is it that the more we understand, the more we need to be alone? Or in other words, why we choose solitude? And in that quiet space, what might you discover for yourself? Distinguishing two core concepts. To understand why intelligent people choose to be alone, we have to start from something very simple that many spend a lifetime confusing. Solitude is not the same as loneliness. In Jung's language and in modern psychology, solitude is the state in which you consciously choose to be by yourself. It is when you feel full, calm, as if you are stepping into a quiet, sheltered room where your favorite chair and a warm cup of tea are waiting, and you're allowed to breathe at your own pace. There, you are not pulled around. You don't have to brace yourself, and your mind begins to recover, like a battery finally plugged into the right socket. Loneliness, on the other hand, is the feeling of being cut off and empty, even when you're surrounded by people. It's like standing behind a sheet of clear glass. You see others laughing, talking, touching each other, but you don't feel you truly belong there. Jung expressed this very clearly. Loneliness does not come from having no people around, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to oneself. You've probably experienced both states without having words for them. When you sit and read, draw, write in your journal, or quietly do some small task on your own, time passes quickly, and your heart feels lighter, and you see yourself more clearly. That is solitude. In those moments, you consciously create a private space because you know it is the environment in which you can recover and grow. You don't need to post it on social media. Don't need anyone to like it. You are simply present with yourself, and that is enough. Loneliness is completely different. It is when you are in the middle of a crowded party, laughter echoing, music blaring, everything's seemingly fun, yet there is a hollow inside that nothing can touch. You talk, socialize, tell a few familiar stories, but you can't say what is truly weighing on your heart. You feel like a supporting character in your own life. Solitude nourishes you. It is when you gradually become still, begin to see the scratches on your soul without panicking at the sight of them. You have time to ask yourself, what am I really living for? Loneliness drains you. It makes you doubt yourself. What's wrong with me? Why do I feel lost even when I'm here with everyone else? When we can't distinguish these two states, we easily become afraid of any moments spent alone. We mistake the absence of others as something dangerous, abnormal. Yet in truth, what hurts us is not the fact of being alone, but the inability to reach anyone, including ourselves. Only when we understand the value of solitude do we dare step into that quiet space without guilt or self-judgment. Being alone is no longer about running away from the world, but about returning, connecting more deeply with the inner world before we can connect healthily with anyone else. And from that moment, another question quietly emerges. If being alone is so important, then what is it in social life that makes sensitive minds withdraw to protect themselves? Reason 1. Protecting the inner world from social pressure and masks. Persona. Jung called one of the greatest pressures we face persona. the social face each person is forced to wear. He wrote, "The persona is that which in reality one is not, but which oneself as well as others think one is." Put simply, the persona is like the clothes we put on when we step out into the world. We choose it to fit wherever we are going. At work, it is professionalism. With friends, it is cheerfulness. With family, it is being the good child or the reasonable one. Without a persona, it will be very hard for us to function in society. The problem is not the mask itself, but the fact that we wear it for so long that we forget what our real face looks like. You've probably had days like that. You spend the whole day smiling, nodding, making conversation, staying polite, and acting more enthusiastic than you actually feel. You play your roles well: a competent employee, an easygoing friend, a non-troublesome family member. But at night, when the door closes, the only thing you want is to turn off all notifications, sit down, and be silent. That doesn't mean you are weak or difficult. It means your body and mind are signaling that you've lived inside the persona for too long, and the real part of you is running out of air. Imagine standing under stage lights all day, constantly in other people's line of sight, constantly having to perform your role. No one can live forever under the spotlights without at some point needing to step backstage. Solitude is that backstage, the place where you can remove the makeup, take off the heavy costume, and look at yourself in the mirror honestly, without fear of judgment. Sensitive people, overthinkers, and often those with deep intellectual lives feel this more intensely than others. They sense the gap between who they truly are inside and the social version of themselves. The bigger the gap, the more exhausted they become. And so, instead of forcing themselves to keep acting, they choose to withdraw to protect their inner world. Bill Watterson, the creator of Calvin and Hobbes, is a beautiful example of this. He stopped drawing the comic strip while it was at its peak, turned down every commercial deal worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and chose a reclusive life in Ohio. That was not an act of hostility toward the world, but a decision to protect the purest part of himself, his creative, free inner world, untouched by the dictates of the market. From Jung's perspective, Watterson refused the persona of wealthy celebrity to preserve the artist within, or take an image that might feel even closer to your own life. A skilled doctor who spends the whole day facing patients, families, colleagues, constantly needing to appear calm, certain, and emotionally supportive. When the shift ends, what they want is very simple: to walk the dog alone, listening to the sound of their footsteps on the sidewalk, letting the demands, expectations, and complaints of the day gradually drain out of their mind. It's their way of washing off the emotional residue of social contact and returning to the state of an ordinary human being, not someone who must always be strong, competent, and ready for every difficult case. For people with depth, the persona is not just a pleasant mask. It can become a burden. They see themselves smiling when they're not happy, agreeing when their heart wants to say no, playing the friendly role when inside they only want quiet. This mismatch hurts, and to ease that pain, the mind's instinct for self-protection pulls them towards solitude, the only place where they no longer have to play a role for anyone. Solitude, then, is not a cowardly escape, but a healthy defensive move. Just as you instinctively pull your hand away from a flame, intelligent people pull their energy out of situations where they've been wearing the mask for too long. They need silence to remember, who am I when I'm not acting anymore? In those quiet spaces, we start to hear again the questions that seem old but are always necessary. What do I truly enjoy? Where am I genuinely tired, genuinely hurt? Am I living according to my own choices, or just carrying out other people's expectations? So if lately you've felt a stronger need to be alone, to mute some conversations, to say no to pointless gatherings, it may not be that there is something wrong with you. It may simply be that the real part of you is knocking, asking to breathe, asking to be seen. Because only when we remove the social mask in a private space can we truly rest and return to our deepest nature. And it is precisely from those moments that seem lonely and out of place that another question quietly forms. If it's not only about putting on or taking off masks, then what does the journey of becoming my true self actually look like? It is here that solitude becomes a doorway. When the persona is temporarily set aside, we finally have the chance to step into a deeper journey. The journey of seeking the true self that Jung calls individuation. The path that intelligent minds are almost compelled to walk, and one that usually can only begin in solitude. Reason 2. The process of individuation. On this solitary journey, have you ever asked yourself, if I'm not an employee, not someone's child, not the one who always knows how to behave in my friend group, then who am I really? Carl Jung called the journey of answering this question individuation, the process of becoming a whole, irreplaceable individual. He wrote, individuation is the process by which a person becomes a psychological individual, that is, a separate, indivisible unity or whole. It sounds philosophical, but in reality, it is something you have already touched many times in your life. It appears in those moments when you sit quietly alone and suddenly feel that your everyday roles are no longer enough to define you. When labels like smart, good, easygoing, funny, mature suddenly feel too tight, no longer big enough to contain everything you are feeling, thinking, and longing for. Individuation is like returning to clean up a house that has been lived in for far too long. At first, you only plan to tidy a bit, throw away a few old things, rearrange some drawers. But the more you clean, the more you discover compartments stuffed with things you had forgotten, things that were once important but got buried, things that are no longer you, yet still sit there taking up space. This journey is not comfortable, but if you never do it, you will keep living in a cluttered house where you don't even know what you're storing. Jung believed that to truly mature psychologically, a person cannot just play their role well in society. One must also have the courage to face one's shadow, one's wounds, one's hidden desires, and one's unspoken fears. And that is something you can hardly do in the middle of a crowd. You cannot be fully honest with your deepest fear and at the same time maintain a polished image in front of everyone. This is why intelligent, sensitive minds often choose solitude at certain stages of life, not because they hate people, but because they understand. Some conversations can only happen between oneself and oneself. You may know the character Jane Eyre from the novel of the same name. Only when she leaves Thornfield, leaves the man she loves, leaves everything that is holding her, does Jane truly face the question of who she is if she is no longer dependent on anyone. She has a remarkable line, "I am no bird, and no net ensnares me. I am a free human being with an independent will." From a psychological perspective, this is a declaration very close in spirit to Jung's idea of individuation. She accepts solitude, accepts giving up outer safety to gain something more important, a self that is no longer bound. In real life, David Bowie, the British singer and actor famous in the 70s, is another example. He was known for constantly reinventing himself, changing his image, his music, his style. Bowie once shared that a true artist must continuously recreate themselves in periods of being alone, separated from the noise of the market and the expectations of the audience. Behind the apparent eccentricity was an inner journey that is very Jungian, a refusal to let his identity harden into any one role, even the role of star. From Freud's perspective, Jung's former teacher, maturity is largely about the ability to control impulses, restrain instincts, and adapt to social norms. Jung never denied this, but he went further. He did not only ask, "How do we fit in?" But also, are we living in accordance with our deepest nature? For Jung, individuation is not about becoming a perfect social version of oneself, but about becoming truly oneself, with both light and shadow. He did not encourage suppressing the dark parts, but encouraged looking directly at them, understanding them, and then integrating them into a larger, more mature sense of self. This is why solitude becomes an indispensable part of the journey for intelligent people. When you are alone, no longer performing, no longer drowned out by external noise, the parts that have been pushed down into the unconscious begin to rise. Old fears, old wounds, even dreams you once dismissed as stupid and not worth pursuing. It is a vulnerable time, easy to make you feel lost, but also a precious time if you know how to stay with it. Of course, facing yourself is not always pleasant. Sometimes you will realize you are not as good a person as you thought. You see your selfishness, jealousy, need for recognition, the petty parts you never wanted to admit. But it is precisely the courage to see and to accept, yes, this is me too, that forms the first real step toward maturity. At this level, solitude is like a mirror, a camera that does not flatter you. It does not adjust the colors, does not smooth your skin, and does not erase your dark circles. It shows you the exact face of your inner world. And if you are brave enough to look, you will know where to care for, to heal, and to change. So how do you walk this path of individuation without being overwhelmed? You don't need to start with big changes. Just give yourself small but regular solo intervals. Write a few lines in a journal before bed. Take a walk alone without listening to anything but your footsteps. Switch off social media for a while and simply observe what you are truly thinking. When you no longer have to perform, your honest thoughts will begin to surface. Perhaps an unnamed sadness, a suppressed anger, or a joy you haven't allowed yourself to feel in a long time. Each such moment is a small step on the path of individuation. You are learning to stay with yourself without rushing to escape. You are learning to befriend your inner world instead of only managing it, supervising it, or judging it. And when you face yourself long enough, something interesting happens. Your inner world is no longer a scary place to avoid, but becomes a rich, layered, colorful landscape. From here, we move to another part of the story. Not only, who am I, but also, what do I carry inside that can nourish me? That is when we come to another reason why intelligent people choose to be alone. They understand that only in solitude can they build a rich inner world, where inspiration, meaning, and the capacity for self-healing begin to bloom. Reason 3, building inner richness and the capacity for self-renewal. When you gradually become familiar with being alone, with facing and conversing with yourself, a very special moment appears. You realize that inside you, there is not only hurt and exhaustion, there are also very beautiful, very rich layers that you were never quite enough to touch before. Jung has a simple yet powerful saying, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." Looking outward, we see goals, standards, comparisons, winning and losing. Looking inward, we begin to encounter another world, the world of emotion, intuition, imagination, the things that once moved us but have been forgotten. Jung calls this the first step of awakening, when we realize we are not only roles and achievements, but also a rich inner life waiting to be cared for. Have you ever felt this? On an unplanned evening, you turn off the TV, turn off your phone, and accidentally pull out an old box of paints, a pen, a notebook you abandoned long ago. You draw a few messy lines, write a few unfinished sentences, and suddenly feel lighter. No one is grading you. No one is praising or criticizing you. Yet something inside has opened. That is the beginning of inner richness. It is not loud, not showy, but it makes being alone no longer an empty stretch of time. Being alone now becomes a chance to explore, to continue the unfinished conversation you have with yourself. Murakami Haruki, the famous Japanese novelist, is a vivid example. In his book, What I Talk About When I Talk About Running, he describes how he often runs long distances alone, day after day. He calls that state a kind of self-hypnosis, mesmerism, in which the repetitive rhythm of his feet and breath helps the surface of his mind settle, allowing deeper layers to emerge. Ideas, images, stories do not always come from crowded places, but often from those empty stretches of road where it's just him and his thoughts. Murakami turned solitude into a doorway into his inner world, not a dark hole from another angle of life. Imagine a retired teacher whose social connections are gradually thinning out. If they cling only to their old rhythm of life, that space will be terrifying. Then one day, that teacher chooses to buy a musical instrument, teaches themselves each note, and practices each piece. In a small room, they devote time to sound, to early clumsiness, to the joy of improving little by little. There may be no one sitting there applauding, but if it were you, wouldn't you feel your mind growing softer, gentler, less attached to the sense of, my role is over? Perhaps they too, like you, would find a new source of life within themselves. What do these examples have in common? Both Murakami and the teacher do not wait for the world to bring them meaning or inspiration. They actively plant small seeds inside, through activities they can do alone, repeatedly, simple enough to sustain, deep enough to touch the inner world. Without inner richness, we are easily addicted to external stimulation, constantly scrolling, turning on music, watching one more thing, talking to one more person, anything but silence. Yet the more we do that, the emptier we feel, because all that stimulation passes too quickly to connect with anything deeper in us. When you understand inner richness, you'll see it as a small library in your mind. Every experience, every moment of self-reflection, every clumsy creative attempt is a book placed on the shelf. The more books there are, the more places you have to return to, and the less you feel empty when no one is around. So how do you come to inhabit this state? Inner richness begins with very simple choices. Choose a time in the day that belongs only to you, even if it is just 10 to 15 minutes. Then choose a habit that nourishes your soul from within, not something you do to perform for others. Reading, writing, playing music, drawing, tending plants, studying something you're genuinely curious about. Finally, and this is not easy, stay a little longer with your emotions. Whether sadness, anger, or emptiness, choose just once to breathe with the feeling and see what it wants to show you, instead of immediately distracting yourself with noise like music or social media. As those choices are repeated, you will notice yourself changing. You panic less when no one texts you. You feel less compelled to go online to find something so I'm not bored. You feel less need to prove to others that you're okay. You begin to sense a new kind of peace, the peace of knowing that as long as you have yourself, you still have somewhere to lean on. Jung never told people to withdraw from the world and live completely isolated. He simply pointed out that if we are empty inside, we will cling to the outside in desperation. But when the inside is full enough, we step into life with a completely different posture, not to beg, but to give our presence, our listening, our creativity. For those on the path of growth, solitude is not a blank space in the schedule, but a private plot of land for planting. If we sow nothing there, it becomes a wasteland, full of the weeds of anxiety, comparison, and inferiority. But if we plant small seeds each day, the time will come when we are surprised to realize we have an entire garden within. This is the next reason why intelligent people choose solitude, not only to recover, not only to hurt less, but to protect the ground where creativity and the deep turning points of life can take root. In the next part, we'll look more closely at this. Why those seemingly small moments in solitude are often where your greatest ideas are quietly formed. Reason 4. True creativity emerges in solitude. Have you ever noticed that your clearest ideas often come when you're in the shower, driving alone, or just sitting quietly by the window looking at the sky? No meetings, no debates, no noisy brainstorming, just you in a very ordinary and very quiet moment. Just as Carl Jung once wrote, the creation of something new is not accomplished by the intellect, but by the play instinct acting from inner necessity. His point is profound. True creativity does not arise when we strain ourselves to come up with something, but when the mind is relaxed, playful, free to reconnect what is already inside. Scientifically, when you are alone and not drawn into any specific task, the brain activates a state called the default mode network, a network that comes online when the mind is wandering, not forced to focus outward. You can picture it as the moment when the sea grows calm and the seabed begins to appear. Fragments of memory, emotion, old and new information slowly rise and find ways to link themselves together. Agatha Christie, the queen of detective fiction, is a fascinating example. In her autobiography, she wrote, "The best time for planning a book is while you're doing the dishes, alone in the kitchen, her hands performing repetitive motions. With no one interrupting, her mind is free to play, to experiment with assembling motives for murder, characters, plot twists. That is not romantic in the sense of sitting at a desk with inspiration surging. It is very ordinary, but precisely in that ordinariness, when no one is watching and there is no pressure to produce, Christie's mind is allowed to connect, imagine, and experiment freely. The quiet solitude of the kitchen opens a creative space that no meeting could ever replace. Or consider this. J.D. Salinger, author of The Catcher in the Rye, chose a reclusive life in Cornish, New Hampshire. He stopped publishing for many years, but continued writing every day, almost completely detached from public opinion. That was not mere eccentricity, but a conscious choice. He understood that if he let himself be swept up in the public gaze, what he wrote would easily be distorted by market taste. Salinger needed solitude as a sealed room to keep his inner voice from blending into the noise outside. From Jung's perspective, this is a form of honoring inner necessity, the demand that arises from within. When an artist, thinker, or anyone who truly wants to create something meaningful steps into their work, they cannot listen only to external noise, market demands, fleeting praise and criticism, and other people's expectations. They must step back, turn inward, and listen for what is genuinely trying to be born through them. And that listening process requires solitude. If you pay attention, you've experienced this yourself. Even if you haven't named it. You think and still can't find a solution to a problem at work. But when you set it aside, take a walk, shower in warm water, or sit quietly looking at the trees, the answer suddenly appears. You are no longer throwing yourself into thinking, but giving your mind the space to rearrange what you've already taken in. That is precisely when the default mode network is at work. It's like when you pack things into a closet. If you just keep stuffing things in, all you get is more clutter. But if you close the closet for a while, then reopen it and begin arranging when your head is clearer, everything finds a more sensible place. Solitude, in this sense, is not withdrawal from life, but the step back needed to see the whole picture more clearly. The problem is, many people are afraid of such quiet spaces. They confuse any silence with loneliness and rush to fill it with phones, sound, and content. As a result, tender ideas never get the chance to grow, intuition never has time to speak, and deep connections between experiences never get formed. The inner world becomes like a garden that is constantly trampled, never left alone long enough for anything to take root. Intelligent or exceptional people, after experiencing a few bathroom moments or ideas on the road, tend to begin respecting their own quiet more. They understand that this is not empty time, but the time when the brain and the soul are working on a deeper level. They see clearly how valuable it is not to be disturbed. A single good idea, a single accurate perspective can change a week, a month, even an entire life. Practicing this does not mean you have to turn yourself into a hermit. First, try changing small habits. Deliberately place a few untouchable quiet pockets into your day. Walking alone without listening to anything, showering without your phone, sitting with a cup of coffee without rushing to open any screen. In those moments, don't force yourself to think of something great. Let your mind drift, play, remember, imagine. Sometimes, the first thing that appears is simply a clearer question, and just one clear question is already a huge step forward. When an idea or a feeling arises, try writing it down, even if it's just a few words. You are sending yourself a signal. I trust you. I am listening. Over time, your mind will become bolder in sending you deeper intuitions. Jung emphasized the role of the play instinct in creativity. When we are alone and less serious about everything, we allow the mind to connect seemingly unrelated things, to try fitting different pieces together without fear of being silly. From there, new things that pure intellect alone could never invent finally have the chance to appear. Only in truly quiet moments is the mind free to connect, to play, and to step off worn-out paths. And once you've tasted this feeling a few times, you'll understand why people of depth guard their solitude, almost like a sacred ritual. From here, another shift tends to happen. They no longer feel drawn to relationships that exist only to kill time. Once they know the value of their solitary hours, where the inner world grows deeper, ideas get clearer, peace becomes stronger, they start to choose more carefully which people and which conversations are allowed into their world. And that leads us to the next reason why intelligent people not only choose to be alone to create, but also because they begin to realize just how much in human connection, depth matters more than breadth. Reason 5. Selective connection. Depth matters more than breadth. Once you've tasted the peace and clarity that solitude brings, something natural begins to change. You no longer want to use relationships just to fill empty time. In other words, people with heightened awareness will consciously filter the connections around them, valuing quality over quantity in their relationships. You may have started to notice this yourself. Some conversations last only 10 or 15 minutes with someone you're truly close to, yet their echo stays with you for an entire week. In contrast, there are loud parties that go on for hours, but the moment you step out the door, the only thing you carry with you is exhaustion. Have you ever experienced that? Carl Jung has a beautiful line. The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But in Jung's eyes, a worthy relationship does not exist just for fun, but one that carries transformative power, where both people, after coming into contact, are no longer the same as before. They understand themselves a little better, understand life a little better, or at the very least, feel that something inside has been awakened. The deeper a person is, the more sensitive they are to this. They can feel very clearly when they are truly meeting a person and when they are only meeting another role. They can subtly sense the difference between conversations where both sides can be honest, can listen, can pause to reflect, and conversations where everyone is just trying to appear interesting, successful, or on point. When the inner richness within you has been nurtured, you no longer need a large number of relationships to feel that you matter. You begin to filter, not because you look down on anyone, but because you understand that your mental energy is limited. The amount of time in a day when you are clear, awake, and fully present is also limited. You want to reserve that precious resource for connections that can make both you and the other person better, deeper, more real, rather than having it shredded by a string of social encounters that everyone forgets shortly after. Look at the case of Elena Ferrante. She keeps her identity hidden, limits her public appearances, yet writes novels that go straight to the depths of human psychology. By keeping her distance from external noise, she protects her inner world and the relationships that truly matter in her private life. For someone like Ferrante, silence, her absence in the public eye, is precisely how she can be more fully present with the people and relationships that hold real meaning. In everyday life, you might see this in a very special friend. Maybe the two of you don't talk every day, don't constantly like each other's posts online, but whenever you sit down together, the conversation goes straight to what's real. No circling, no acting. Just one meeting can be enough for you to feel supported, illuminated, or at the very least, allowed to be yourself. Existential philosophy holds two interesting attitudes toward people and relationships. Jean-Paul Sartre said, "Hell is other people." He emphasized the feeling of being trapped under the gaze that judges, labels, and fixes us. In contrast, Martin Buber speaks of the I-Thou relationship, where we meet the other as a living subject, not as a tool or a mirror to confirm our ego. Jung does not wholly take one side, but he shows a way to reconcile them. When we are not yet full inside, we easily live in Sartre's view, seeing others as threats, as judgment, as hell. But once we have a more solid inner foundation, we can choose Buber-style relationships, where two inner worlds meet in equality and respect, and both grow. That's why intelligent people, after going through the solitary journey of removing masks, facing their shadow, and nurturing their inner life, often become very picky about connection. They no longer feel the need to have many friends. They no longer feel less than if they're not present at every gathering. They know very well that one right person, one deep relationship, can sometimes be more precious than dozens of connections that exist only to keep loneliness at bay. Practically speaking, what does this mean? It means you begin to allow yourself to say no. Say no to meetups you already know will only leave you more drained. Say no to conversations where you have to force yourself to prove something about who you are. Say no to keeping in touch just because you're afraid the other person might feel hurt, even though every interaction leaves you depleted and heavy. At the same time, you also learn to say yes more clearly. Yes to those who can listen to you without judgment. Yes to slow conversations where both people can be honest about their fears, sorrows, weaknesses, and dreams. Yes to relationships that allow you to be yourself, not a polished version designed to please someone else's eyes. When you choose solitude, not because you despise people, but because you want to protect your mental health and your honesty with yourself, solitude becomes an act of responsibility. You step back a little to see where you are, what you need, and whether you still have enough energy to give. From there, every time you step out to connect, you show up clearer, deeper, healthier. Choosing solitude in this sense is choosing to build inner strength before stepping into any relationship. You no longer seek others to fill a void, but look for people who can walk beside you, each carrying their own inner world, meeting, and then both expanding a little. That is exactly in the spirit of Jung's quote, meeting and both being transformed. And once you've experienced that kind of connection, it becomes very hard to go back to relationships built only on habit, fear, or heavy loneliness. Solitude teaches you that worse than being alone is being in the wrong place, beside people who make you feel lonelier than when you're by yourself. By now, you can probably see the picture more clearly. Intelligent people choose solitude not because they are weird, but because they need space to remove their masks, rediscover their core self, nurture their inner life, listen to their creative voice, and selectively cultivate the kinds of connections that help both sides grow. The final question that remains is this: how can you turn your own solitude into a clean source of energy instead of a deep, pit of isolation, how can solitude not push you away from life, but prepare you to return to it, clearer, softer, and more authentic? We'll bring everything together in the final part, with an overview and a few small suggestions, so you can begin right from where you are today. If you've walked with me from the beginning until now, you've probably seen this. The solitude of intelligent people is not a system error, but a profound choice of a mind in the process of maturing. Solitude, in Jung's spirit, is an active state. It is not locking yourself away out of fear, out of hurt, or out of hatred for the world. It is the moment you step back from external noise to take off your social masks and ask yourself again, who am I when I'm no longer performing? It is the foundation of individuation, so that you don't just live as a role, but become a whole human being with your own identity and your own voice. When you dare to be alone, you allow your inner world to grow. You begin to learn how to nourish yourself with small joys, creative moments, and quiet hours that don't need an audience. From there, true creativity appears, not from straining, but from a mind that is free to play, reconnecting things that have been lying inside you for a very long time. And when the inside is less empty, you no longer need so many relationships to fill yourself up. You choose fewer connections, but deeper ones. You learn to say no to interactions that drain you, and yes to encounters that have the power to transform both sides. Just as Jung once said, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. The lesson here is not that everyone should live in isolation, but this: don't be afraid of your own aloneness. See solitude as a kind of tonic for the modern mind, a place where you can rest, breathe, and hear your inner voice again. Each day, just 10 to 30 minutes truly reserved for yourself is enough to begin building a stronger foundation for your intellect and your emotions. Solitude does not make us weak. On the contrary, used wisely, it is a sign of a mind mature enough to live truthfully and brave enough to look directly at itself. So, what about you? Have you ever experienced the healing power of being alone? And what is the moment of solitude that helped you return to your true self? Share your own journey in the comments below. If you feel this content has resonated with you, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so we can keep traveling together into the inner world in journeys like this.